Vague pronouns. What are they and why do they cause so many problems for our writing? Well, vague pronouns are whenever we use words such as they, it, them, he or she without necessarily stating who we're talking about. So the reason that vague pronouns are problematic for our writing is that they leave our readers confused. So it's better to replace vague pronouns with more specific nouns so that readers know what we're talking about. I'm going to pull a couple examples from student papers. If you recognize this writing, don't worry, I have not said your name, but just rest assured, vague pronouns come up in everybody's writing. I have to actively revise my writing to correct for them. Okay, so I'm reading a sentence here from a couple sentences from a student paper. People choose to inhale chemicals into their lungs, and now they are paying for it. It is their fault if they are overly stressed and anxious. If they choose to use nicotine, is it their fault, though, if they are overly stressed and anxious? If they chose to use nicotine as a coping mechanism? It's a 50-50 shot. They are looking for an easy way out. Okay, so this is a little confusing, right? So, for example, in the first sentence, we have clearly a subject. People choose to inhale chemicals into their lungs, and now they are paying for it. But what does it refer to? Are they paying for the chemicals? Are they paying for the damage in terms of health issues? This sentence would be stronger if we said people choose to inhale chemicals into their lungs, and now these people are suffering through lung issues and respiratory issues. So see how we replaced it with a specific word, lung and respiratory issues. All right, next sentence. Is it their fault, though, if they are overly stressed and anxious? So is it whose fault? The people's fault? The chemicals' fault? It's unclear. So what if we said instead, is it cigarette users' own fault if these users are overly stressed and anxious? See how that makes sense now? Okay, next sentence. If they choose to use nicotine as a coping mechanism, again, who are they? How about if cigarette users choose to use nicotine as a coping mechanism? All right, next sentence, it's a 50-50 shot. What does its refer to? Is the 50-50 shot that they're going to get lung cancer? So this would be better if we said like cigarette smokers have a 50-50 shot of getting lung cancer. Although I don't know that that's actually true, but just to kind of make the sentence more specific. All right, and the next sentence, they are looking for an easy way out. Again, who are they? Are they the cigarette smokers? So you could say cigarette smokers are looking for an easy way out. But also, what do we mean by an easy way out? So this isn't a vague pronoun, but it is a vague statement. For example, do we mean cigarette smokers are looking for somebody to blame for their nicotine addiction when in fact they have a choice when they begin smoking cigarettes? So we could try something like that. All right, I'm going to give you another paper. So in this paper, the writer says, there's a quote. The quote says, for the first time in the past 100 years, the working class, the 50% of Americans with the lowest incomes today, pay higher tax rates than billionaires. And this is a quote from the New York Times. Then the writer says, I was appalled when reading this statement and shocked about how we are letting these acts go on. Okay, so my question for the writer is, who are we? Who is letting these acts go on? And also, what do we mean by these acts? What are the acts? So instead of saying, I was appalled when reading this statement and shocked about how we are letting these acts go on, how about I was appalled when reading this statement and shocked about how politicians are requiring the lowest earners to carry the greatest tax burden. So see how we replace the word we with a more specific group, politicians, and we replaced the vague phrase letting these acts go on with specifically what the acts are, which are requiring the lowest earners to carry the greatest tax burden. So the we is a pronoun, so that's an example of a vague pronoun. The second part, letting these acts go on, isn't a pronoun, but it's just an example of a very vague phrase. So to revise your writing at every turn, I want you to ask yourself, what do I mean here? Pause and circle or highlight every single time you use a pronoun like it, they, them, we, and I want you to replace those anytime that you can, or anytime that using those pronouns makes your writing unclear, with a more specific noun. And then I want you to look for kind of like loosey-goosey, unclear phrases, like ones that aren't very specific, and I want you to replace them with more specific phrases. Doing these two things are two of the best and fastest ways to make your writing clear and stronger. And one of the main problems that writers have is just having their readers not know what they're talking about. And that's not what our goal is as writers, right? We want our readers to follow us. So we do that. Oh, who is we? I should replace it. So writers do that by telling their readers who they're talking about by using specific subjects and nouns anytime they can. So this is one great way that you can revise your writing to make it more specific and clear.